they're doing. Hi, everybody. Jack Owens for GMO-Free News. Today, we are going to be talking with Melissa Mays on the bus from Flint, Michigan to Washington, D.C. And we also have Zen Honeycutt, Moms Across America. She's joining us from Southern California, Irvine, California. Is that where you're at, Zen?
Mission Viejo.
Mission Viejo. So I've already talked to Melissa. Why don't you begin?
Is that garbage? Yeah. There you go.
Thank you so much, Melissa, for being with us on the bus.
Anybody got garbage?
But
no, not yet.
We'll pass it back just in case. Sorry. Thank you guys for having us. Sorry, there's a garbage bag heading back. It's a bunch of people here. It's awesome. People coming from Flint and DC know what's up. So pretty excited.
so tell me what's happening. Why are you going to DC?
Well, in the morning at 9 o'clock, there is a congressional hearing, and I just got message, even though emergency manager Early and Governor Snyder had declined to testify, apparently Early's being subpoenaed. So I haven't read the article, but somebody posted it, and that was the title, so I'm going to check into that. So he has to testify, which would be amazing.
So the hearing, the congressional hearing is for what? Are they going to be discussing what happened, who's responsible, what happened?
Exactly. How this could possibly happen, whose fault it was, who made the decision to not treat the water, and who's made the decision to switch to the Flint River, because nobody's even owning up to that. So, so they're having like Miguel Del Toro from the EPA, Mark Edwards, and Congressman Kildee, a slew of other people testify as to what exactly happened. And so they're just trying to get to the bottom of it, because I think that, and this is, pulled off by the Democrats, I think that they're going to try to work on an impeach Snyder type of thing, but he turned down testifying, but I think that we'll get what we need from other people.
Okay, so you said that they're going to be focusing on why the water wasn't treated and who made the decision to switch, which would then led to the poisoning of your entire city. Can I ask, is anybody going to be focusing on why the water is contaminated with toxic chemicals in the first place?
That's something that we are working on and getting actually tested from outside labs. That's something that we are actually in the process of with other universities outside of Michigan, because the testing that was done inside of Flint with Kettering University, the data and the instructor disappeared. So, yes. So it was apparently the study showed that there was 125 chemical contaminants in the Flint River. Also, another thing that we found is that there's fracking right outside of Holloway Dam, and nobody's controlling the waste. So we don't know what was dumped in. We basically have no idea what we ingested for a year and a half. So
that data is no longer to be found anywhere?
No longer available. Nobody can find it, and the instructor that was, it was a student project, and that instructor has been misplaced, gone.
The whole scenario is outrageous. It's incredible to me that you are holding up as you are. You're going through, I hear from Jack that you are very sick. You're on 14 different medications. You have seizures. You've got liver damage. Your kids all have lead poisoning. And yet you are still persecuting, and you are still on your way to be a part of this. Will you be able to speak?
I don't think so, because I think the Republicans are blocking any other citizens from speaking. So that was something I talked to Congressman Kildee about today, and he said that we're getting blocked. But that's why we're going to be sitting right up front behind him, so they can actually look into my son's faces. They can look into us and look at us and realize, hey, this is what you're blocking. Why would you block the truth? Tell these kids the truth. So.
Well, Leanne is going to be speaking.
Yes, she's going to be talking about what she went through with Miguel, and the fact that he got shut up. So he got silenced for quite some time. He was not allowed to talk to us. And that's, because that's ridiculous in itself. So it shows a failure with the EPA as well.
Yeah, well, what I am most particularly interested in, from Moms Across America, our background and focus is mostly on GMOs and glyphosate. But what we're seeing is that there are GMO sugar beet farms upstream, upriver, and they do use glyphosate, and we're very concerned that glyphosate is a chelator. It was originally used as a pipe cleaner, and that it is very likely drawing the lead out of the pipes into the water. And that if the glyphosate wasn't in the water in the first place, that you may not have this much of a problem.
Well, it might be one of the reasons why the river was 20 times more corrosive than Detroit. Not just a few times, but 20 times more corrosive. It's got to be one of the ingredients, and I don't see why not. I mean, nobody controlled what was being dumped into the river, and then they treated it the best they can, but no water treatment plant has filtration for things like that, for fracking waste and glyphosate, any of the things. No, there's no filter. They don't do reverse osmosis that's going to strip everything out, even if it can. So no. So the best they could do is soften it a little bit. They didn't even use corrosion control, for crying out loud. So they're not going to be able to properly treat any of that. So yeah, so I'm interested to see what all is in our water, and then of course what came through our taps, and maybe it'll help our doctors be able to better treat us, because they'll know what they're fighting against. Because as of right now, like my doctors, I have to have a liver biopsy. They're going to try to dig in there and try to find what all is trapped in my system.
I'm so sorry that this is happening. This is so
Melissa,
tragic.
can you talk about Doctors Without Borders?
Yeah, so I spoke with Doctors Without Borders this morning, and I told them we need help, and I said one of the things we needed is training and assistance for our local physicians, because this is something they don't know how to deal with, and rightfully so, because this is a first world country. This shouldn't be happening here, but it's time that they learn. So we need help, we need proper testing, because the state is not doing proper testing. They're still doing the finger prick test, and they're not testing kids unless they're 6 and under. So my kids are completely excluded. We're just happy to have a really good pediatrician. And my doctor, who was amazing, he was just like, yes, you test everybody, but they're not. They're just testing children, and they're not testing adults, and they're not doing a complete blood count, which the biggest sign of extended poisoning is going to be that complete blood count, to see if they're anemic, see if they're basophilic stippling, and other things. So these doctors can be properly treat these patients without proper testing. And the only reason they're doing that is because they know people have been on bottled water for a while, and that their little snippet blood levels were going to be low. So they can say, oh, only a certain percentage of kids are poisoned. Well, you know what? If their blood levels are high right now, that means they're drinking the water right now, and that means it's a huge failure of our state and our local government to tell them don't drink the water. Nothing has still been mailed out that says don't drink the water and don't boil the water. For the love of God, don't boil the water.
Nothing has been mailed out to the residents of Flint saying don't drink the water?
Nope.
That is shocking.
It is. And the state, because what they did do is they had DHS come out and say it's okay to bathe your kids. My water's still blue. Tell me it's okay to put my kids in that. Yeah. So that's what we're still doing with it. It's all the misinformation on their part, and all the lies they're still putting out. It's unbelievable. So I'm glad the FBI is now getting involved. Know the truth, but this needs to stop, because they are continuing to put people in danger.
Melissa, why is your tub blue?
It means stripping pipes.
We just lost you. We didn't hear why your pipes were blue. Hopefully.
I think she said why her water was blue.
Well, her tub is blue because she has copper coming into her house.
Her tub is blue. Okay, her tub.
And she has lead and copper damage, and copper tends to go to the kidneys, from what I understand. So they have a chemical cocktail coming into their households, and it has totally destroyed the infrastructure of the water system in Flint. Not just the water mains, but inside the houses. They had a plumber. I don't know if you watched Rachel Maddow, but Rachel Maddow had a plumber give an estimate on how much it would cost to go into a house and replace all their plumbing. It would cost about $12,000. Well, the houses in Flint are selling for $10,000. It costs more to replace the plumbing than it does to that the house is worth.
Yeah, and even if you do replace the plumbing, if you continue to get water, I mean, if obviously they're not going to continue to get water from the river in Flint, but if they were to, it would still be poison. So the source of why the water is poisoned in the first place, I think is not being addressed in the media. They're focusing on the senator, I mean, rightly so, the poor decision he made, and also the fact that they made a decision to switch from Detroit to Flint without the proper channels, the usual channels of regulation.
Well,
but they're not focusing on why the water is corrosive in the first place.
There is no they in terms of switching. It was one person, and that was the governor, because both cities, Detroit and Flint, were under something called emergency manager, and they're a dictator.
Right.
Democracy is put on hold. So one person was the decider, and that was the governor. All roads led to the governor. So it was no they. They did not decide to switch. It was one person, and that is the governor.
Right.
Because he set
I understand
himself
that there
up.
used to be a sort of committee, there used to be a process that you had to go through, but the government decided to do away with that and have basically a dictatorship, and appointed one man, and between he and the other man, the man that retired, I forgot his name.
Well, they had four. This is so corrupt, Zen. They have four of these emergency managers, and what they did, see, Governor Snyder, he wrote the law, so he put loopholes in it. The emergency manager was supposed to serve for like 18 months. Well, 17 months and 2 weeks, they would resign, and then that allowed them to bring in another emergency manager. So they could just continue to bring in emergency managers forever and ever. They would just work
so
to a certain
keep it
point.
under their control, and not have to have committees and all that.
That's right. And so they went through 4 emergency managers in that type of situation. So it was totally corrupt. They have a elected body, which is the city council. They have a mayor, which was elected, but they're powerless. There are city council meetings on YouTube that you can watch, and the city council members at a city council meeting, they're yelling at the emergency manager to please get them off of the water, of the Flint River water. Back in January, they were pleading, they were begging with the emergency manager, and the emergency manager just got up and he walked out the door. He didn't have to hear it. That's all on video. That's all on YouTube. And I mean, that's the way they rolled. So it wasn't a they who decided, it was one person.
And what's amazing to me is that this one person, and then subsequently other people after this, when they started hearing about the damage, like in the EPA, when they started hearing about the harm, that they completely ignored it and thought that somehow it would just go away, that they wouldn't have to be responsible, that people weren't going to be harmed, that they wouldn't be, irreversibly harmed, permanently harmed, and that ignoring this somehow would work. I can't imagine a world where somebody would come to me and say something that you're doing is causing harm, and I would just completely ignore it. The only way to be responsible or to go forward or to have something go away is to face it head on and take responsibility and try to find a way to fix it. This is just incredible.
It worked for them in Washington, D.C. in 2001, 2004. And that's the reason why Mark Edwards, the university professor from Virginia Tech, really dropped everything he was doing and went to Flint, and he had a class that he was teaching on engineering ethics, and he loaded up his engineering class in a van and drove the 9 hours or so to Flint to look into this more deeply, because he didn't want what happened in Washington, D.C. to happen in Flint. He wanted it to stop. And this is Washington, D.C. part 2 for Mark Edwards. And he will be talking tomorrow in the congressional hearing in Washington, D.C. And he did this exact same thing, 10 years ago in Washington, D.C., where he talked in front of congressional hearings, but nothing happened. Nobody went to jail. Nobody got fired. In fact, they even came out a couple of years ago saying that nobody was harmed in the lead water poisoning crisis in Washington, D.C., 2001, 2004. So that has been their MO. They just pretend like it doesn't happen. They have their scientists come out just like Monsanto, and they say, there's no problem here. Nobody's getting harmed. You can't give us one person that has been harmed, because they will, break them down.
Well, I don't see
Crazy.
Melissa Mays or Leanne or any of these other moms being broken down anytime soon. I don't see them giving up. I see that there's an entire nation of angry mothers that are not going to put up with this anymore. Chemical companies are polluting our waters. Our government is allowing them to do it. They're in fact in cahoots with them. They're allowing these chemicals to be approved fraudulently. And we are finding this out, and we are not going to continue to put up with this. It's just absolutely unacceptable. And, there's ways that there are things that we can do about this. I mean, Melissa Mays having the courage and the fortitude to speak up about it. But every single person that's listening to this that will find out about, Flint, Michigan, and the pollution of our water, our airs, our urine, our breast milk with toxic chemicals, our couches, our plastics, our food, everything. What you can do is stop buying it. These chemical companies only have the power that they have because we give it to them. We give them our money, we buy their products, and we can stop doing that. And we can reduce the power and the hold that they have over our government by reducing their profits, by not buying their toxic chemicals and their toxic products anymore. And, of course, obviously more urgent steps need to be taken in Flint, Michigan, other than just not buying, or not using the toxic water. Obviously, there needs to be major overhaul of this system there. And of course, new pipes and new, water coming in from a different direction. But as far as all the other people that aren't in Flint, those toxic chemicals would not be in the water if we were not buying the products that they are being used on, whether it's coming from factories or nuclear plants or fracking or GMO sugar beet fields. If we were not using those products, those chemicals would not be there. So we have to see the big picture.
It has been coming from the car industry for over 50 years.
Or the car industry, right?
I mean, people aren't going to stop driving cars.
Well,
that's what drives the economy.
We can demand better controls over the release of toxic chemicals that are being used with cars. We can demand better.
Well, that's the problem. They shipped all the jobs out of the country, and so they're dealing with these environmental issues. In Michigan, they are still dealing with the catastrophe of the environmental problems that were caused by the automobile industry, back in the day. That's why the Flint River is kind of a death trap to a lot of people that live along the Flint River. I mean, it's just the way the American economy has marched.
Well, just the way it is doesn't mean it has to be that way. Just because it is doesn't mean it ought to be. That's a fallacy, and it doesn't mean that we just need to roll back and accept it. We're living with the mistakes that were made 50 years ago. Right. So we need to keep going. We need to not stop about this. We need to keep speaking up. The people at the EPA have children too. The senators have children too. There's 1 out of 2 males and 1 out of 3 females in America today that are expected to get cancer. That means every single person in America loves someone who either has cancer right now or will get cancer and may die from it much earlier than they should. And if anybody that's listening has gone through this, they are outraged. They are incredibly angry to lose a loved one from cancer. And these toxic chemicals, 90-something% of cancers are caused by environmental causes. And that includes all kinds of the 80,000 toxic chemicals that are in our environment. So, this is a matter of great urgency because we are in a health crisis. And just because it is this way doesn't mean it ought to be this way, doesn't mean that we should, just accept it or whatever. It means that we need to get louder and speak up and say no more and stop this. And I'm very grateful for Melissa Mays. I wish we could have talked to her longer. For those of you that have hung in there and still watching with us, they are going to a congressional hearing tomorrow about Flint, Michigan. Apparently Snyder has been subpoenaed. So
no, not Snyder. Snyder has not been subpoenaed. Daryl Early, which was the emergency manager at the time.
Early. Okay. Early, who has been the emergency manager, has been subpoenaed. He's decided not to speak, but he's been subpoenaed. So apparently he will speak. Melissa Mays will not be able to speak, but Leanne somebody will be speaking up for the mothers and the children in Michigan. And so we will be waiting to hear about that. And they are also doing further testing on the water, and we'll be trying to find out what type of exactly chemicals are in the water and what types of chemicals are in their own bodies. And they will keep going. Apparently there's going to be a march. Do you know, Jack, the date of the march happening?
On the 19th, Reverend Jesse Jackson is going to lead a march in downtown Flint, Michigan.
Great. So if you're anywhere in the area and you want to be supportive of Flint, Michigan, please join them on February 19th.
Do you have any affiliates, Moms Across America in Detroit, around the area? You guys can march with your banners.
We have over 700 leaders. I can't tell you off the top of my head exactly who's in Detroit, but we'll be looking into that. We'll be letting our Moms Across America know about that, and other supporters, other organizations as well. So
Melissa's on one bus. There were two buses that went out of Flint, Michigan. There were 160 people on each bus, and then there were two buses that left from Detroit with 60 people. So 240 people are on their way right now on a red-eye bus trip to Washington, D.C. And when they get in early in the morning, they're going to get up and then they're going to go to the hearing, which is really amazing because there are only 60 seats in the hearing room. So hopefully, did you know, is there an overflow room?
I don't know what hearing room they're going to be in, so I couldn't say if there's an overflow room. But when I went, there was no overflow room. There was just the hallway. We were there 2 or 3 hours in advance, and they had paid lawyers, they had paid students from law schools to be in line to take up the seats and to stop us from getting into the congressional hearing. Then we were waiting in line for over 4 hours just in case anybody left. I was 3 away from getting into the room, so I stayed there and waited. And they did not allow us to sit down because apparently sitting down is an act of protest on the Hill. And also a friend of mine wore a t-shirt that said, "I love my life," and he was forced to remove his t-shirt and turn it inside out in case he would be able to, in case he could enter, because there's no wording on t-shirts allowed. That's also an act of protest. So, it will be very interesting if she gets in, or very interesting if she doesn't. I'm sure we'll be hearing about it or it'll be broadcast. But I'm sure that the powers that be will be attempting to keep as many activists out that could be unruly. That, of course, is their concern, that somebody could shout, that somebody could be emotional, that somebody could actually cry or scream or say enough is enough. And that's their fear. There
really is no opposition here. There isn't an opposition to this. I mean, the opposition is in Michigan, is at the state level, and it's the lawyers and it's the PR folks.
Okay,
and they're small.
If they're empathetic and they are going to be doing something about it, then I hope they are willing to hear what the mothers have to say, and they do give them a voice, and they do give them a time at the microphone.
Well, Leanne Walters, she is the mother that really got this whole thing going, and she met up with Melissa last year in January. So it's just been two moms that have really been spearheading this, but Leanne is the one that has twin sons, and one of her sons is compromised immune system. He's 35 pounds lighter than his twin, 4 years old, and he's lead poisoned. He's damaged, major damage. So she's just unstoppable, and she is going to have a seat at the table. She was invited to be a witness at the hearing tomorrow, and her story has been told over and over in most of the major media outlets over the last month. She is like one of the heroes. They have like they have the Flint water crisis heroes. She's the #1 hero on the top of everybody's list. All the other heroes point to Leanne, who is the unstoppable mom.
Yeah, well, I'm so grateful for the unstoppable moms. I've got to sign off. My son just sent me a note saying I am bored, and
bored.
Yes, but
Okay.
Yeah, so hats off to Leanne and to Melissa Mays and to her sons and to all the people who are going out to Flint, Michigan. Our hearts are with them. We are extremely grateful for their unstoppableness, and they stand not just for Flint, but for every single city in America that is experiencing toxins in their water, in their food, in their air, in their rain. It is happening. America is being poisoned by these toxic chemicals, and it must stop. And we will keep speaking up about it. So thank you, Jack, for having us on. And everybody out there, please get aware, get informed, find out about this, what's happening. And it wouldn't hurt for you to test your water in your city. Thanks so much. Good night, Jack.
Good night.